It's more of a candidate-driven market, favorable to those looking at opportunities. They have a little bit more negotiating power and stuff like that as they explore new roles. Compensation alone, it's always a priority, but it's not the only thing. As bonuses increase across the board, they're pretty standardized. And so it's going to be up to the firms to making a strong case for like why their platform and why their growth trajectory is going to be stronger than where someone is already at or some of their competitors.
What about counter offers?
I think it's definitely something firms need to be aware of. As this demand for hiring increases, the demand for retention also increases.
Just tell me your thoughts on how artificial intelligence is specifically affecting and impacting the investment banking sector.
Yeah, I mean, it's
My guest today is objectively the best investment banking recruiter in Selby Jennings history, Emily Long. She's an expert in her market and puts that knowledge on display in this conversation, with topics ranging from why 2026 is a renaissance year for investment banking and deal making, why the banks need to be the ones selling themselves to candidates rather than the other way around, and of course, where AI is playing a role in the investment banking process and why. Listen in as Emily gives a masterclass on banking consultation. Let's start with the state of the investment banking bar for talent. Give me the state of play as we are in 2026, maybe how it compares to the past, what you're seeing now. Where's the current bar?
absolutely. So we're in a very dynamic market right now. After a slow couple of years of being in a very job-driven market, we're transitioning to what we consider more of a candidate-driven market. It's seeming to be very similar to the type of market dynamics we saw back in 2021. And when I say job-driven or candidate-driven, it's basically supply and demand of people that are exploring opportunities and opportunities available. So for example, the last couple of years, we've seen more rifts across the market. Deal flow across investment banking has been pretty slow. Bonuses haven't been as high. And so due to that, there have been more and more people exploring opportunities, but not that many available, creating a job-driven market. Whereas now, deal flow is picking back up. Bonuses have been much stronger. There's more of a need for firms to build out to keep up with that deal flow. And so more and more opportunities are opening up, but at the same time, candidates are generally happier where they're at, given all those things. And so it's more of a candidate-driven market, favorable to those looking at opportunities. They have a little bit more negotiating power and stuff like that as they explore new roles.
Is there anything that comes to mind for you that you think is leading to this kind of uptick in activity?
I think macroeconomic conditions are creating a better deal environment. So, there were opportunities that deal teams were chasing over the last couple of years, but it was just harder to get deals done. And there was more uncertainty in the market, which was why things were so slow. So now that a lot of the macroeconomic conditions are more favorable to deals getting done, it's leading to an uptick in deal flow, which in turn is leading to more recruiting activity and more demand, I guess, for building out teams and hiring.
Got it. And what about candidate expectations? What should candidates be aware of? How can they stand out? What can they be doing that they can maybe, add value in a way that others can't? Or what should they expect going into looking to make a career move or enter the space, that kind of thing?
I think the more important question is what should firms be doing, just because we're in this more of a candidate-driven market. Candidates are going to have almost like their pick of the litter as it comes to opportunities, but it's going to be the firms that are really going to need to find a value proposition, I guess, or convey their value proposition to different candidates. I mean, a lot of the candidates in the market are taking a more opportunistic approach. They're generally happier in their current seats because things are more active and bonuses are better. I still talk to a lot that are open to hearing things out if an interesting opportunity comes along. But it's the firms that need to convey, why is that opportunity interesting? Compensation alone, it's always a priority, but it's not the only thing. As bonuses increase across the board, they're pretty standardized. And so it's going to be up to the firms to making a strong case for like why their platform and why their growth trajectory is going to be stronger than where someone is already at, or, some of their competitors that may be interviewing the same candidates. So I think it's going to be really important for firms that are looking to grow. They're going to need to be thoughtful about all these things, about their value proposition, as well as, their timelines to get somebody through an interview process. If they're lagging, they're likely going to miss out on the people that they want to bring on board to their competitors who are moving quicker. So I would say that's probably the main thing.
I mean, nothing, we're not rewriting the script here, right? This happens all the time. In a candidate-driven market, clients need to find ways to set themselves apart.
Mhm.
We probably say this 1,000 times a year in a candidate-driven market. To dig further into your point, maybe a question that I would have, and obviously this is unique, right? We try to consult our clients in various ways on how they can stand out in this age or in this current market. Do you think it's deal flow chances or opportunities? Is it, relationships and a chance to own your own book? Do you think it's the opportunity to work with a certain platform or technology offering? Are there specific things that certain clients might want to try and prop themselves up on to help themselves stand out, or do you think it's just too unique, to kind of generalize?
That's a really good question. I think it does vary in a sense. I'd say you can kind of guess, I guess, based on the level of the candidate, like what's going to be most important. If you're
Right.
interviewing for analysts or associates, they're going to be hyper fixated on the deal reps that they're going to get and the learning and the development to set them up for either a longer term career with that firm or maybe making a transition in the future. Maybe they're also more focused on like the brand name of their shop or whatever it may be. If you're looking at like experienced associates or VPs, a common concern among a lot of senior associates and VPs has been the lack of junior support on the team. If they're not adequately staffed at the analyst level, or if their team struggles to hire and retain junior level bankers, that means for them that the path to grow is going to be really hard. Maybe they still get the promotion, but are they really going to be taking a step up in responsibility, or are they going to have to continue to play down to kind of fill that skills gap? And so it's that kind of looking at the bottom. It's also looking at the top. Are there too many people ahead of them? Is there a spot for them to grow into long term? So I'd say for anybody that's like 5+ years into their career in banking, looking, at the structure and the overall growth trajectory is going to be the main thing to get across to them. Whereas for more junior level people, they're just looking to build that experience and, get some good reps under their belt and, maybe land in an industry or a sector that they prefer to cover. But it's more of those foundational things as opposed to like more senior level bankers that want that longer term path to grow or the clarity on the long term path to grow.
Got it. I mean, that's totally fair, right? So in summary, there is no one size fits all way to stand out. There is no one size fits all value prop or market pitch. But I think the big takeaway, if I understand what you're saying, from a recruitment perspective, is that when candidates are looking opportunistically, it isn't just compensation. It's not just relying on the obvious, right? There has to be a proper sell. And if you're working with somebody like us or you in particular, we have to be representing the client's standout value prop as much as we are trying to represent the candidate's interest as well, because the selling in an opportunistic market, right? The selling is actually more trying to attract the talent than it is put the talent into the client.
In this type of opportunistic market, candidates aren't or qualified bankers, the people that these firms want to hire likely don't have their resume up to date because they're not, going home after work and thinking through what they want to do next and applying it on job boards. It's all about, kind of approaching them at the right time, which it's hard to find the right time in this kind of market when everyone's so busy. But,
Yeah.
I think firms need to be aware of that, like identifying what they want and kind of reaching out or, having a third party recruiter reach out on their behalf. It's going to be important that they are kind of putting in a little bit more work. Last couple of years, you post something on LinkedIn, an ad on LinkedIn, and you get a lot of applications because there were a lot of people active in the market. But as people take this more opportunistic approach, it's going to require a little bit more of an effort from firms that are identifying the individuals and getting them through the process and getting them interested in the opportunity.
At the same time, though, right, when it is more candidate driven, if you look at it through this lens that I'm about to present, it actually could allow firms to only poach a certain level of talent, right? They could go after the absolute best or the rainmakers because they could say, look, we understand it's actually quiet from a talent movement perspective right now. So we want to their outreach could be extremely pointed. It could be extremely targeted to actual dial movers who probably aren't looking to leave. But if you're trying to move the dial yourself as a client, right, there are there aren't mass applications that are kind of clouding the candidate pool. It's a really interesting way to look at it.
I think that resonates really well with a candidate when they're specifically or when they're specifically targeted by a company. I've had firms give me exact names of people that they want to reach out to. Maybe they've worked with them in the past or they've heard good things, and you approach a candidate who's not active, but say they were chosen or they were identified as somebody who would be a good fit. That immediately grabs their interest and attention. And I think it makes them feel like valued throughout the interview process. I think it's something that firms should be really aware of, is making this very much a two-way interview street this year. Because again, the candidates don't need to make a move. They are likely employed, they're likely happy with their position. And so they have to be approached in a way that, not necessarily makes them feel special, but, encourages them to kind of go through the process and gets them excited about meeting with the team.
Without question. Without question. And that should be said about every recruitment process, candidate driven market or not, but especially highlighted this year. So let's talk a little bit about how bonuses might play a role in generating some or any of that activity. And what I mean by that is I want your perspective on what movement or not, right? Because you mentioned bonuses are good and people might want to stay. What movement this has created at certain levels, or perhaps in certain sectors, right? Are we seeing that the VP level is more content and the associate level wants to move? Are we seeing that healthcare, it's less deal flow than TMT? Just give me the general kind of sense on where you think bonus payout is driving the market, and maybe just the sectors in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, bonuses are definitely up this year, and there's still some shops that need to announce and pay out their bonuses for their 2025 bonuses. But from the data we've collected so far, bonuses are up and people are generally pleased. We have seen some common trends, elite boutique or middle market platforms have paid what seems like slightly higher bonuses than those of bulge brackets, where, maybe they've invested more in senior level talent at the bulge brackets, and that's cut into the bonus pool. For whatever reason, their bonuses have been a little bit lower. So that could be a reason for someone to want to move to a different type of platform where maybe they earn higher comp, or maybe they want an all cash compensation structure, or whatever it may be. I would say the main conversation I've been having with people around bonuses is like, well, what can they get if they make a move this year? Are they going to get a guaranteed bonus? I mean, we saw a lot of guaranteed bonuses offered in 2021, and non-prorated bonuses too. So if somebody moved, let's say in July, they get paid for a full year and they're not leaving any money on the table. And I think that's going to be a really important thing for firms to be prepared to vet out, I guess, with each candidate that they're speaking with this year, because now that bonuses are up, compensation expectations are higher, and people know that they're leaving more on the table if they do make a transition. So it's going to be a big topic of conversation and a very important part of getting the right people.
Right. And are there certain markets that you're seeing where the bonuses are paying better, where candidates are happier, or maybe where the bonuses are so good that they could even consider, you know what, I just got paid an enormous bonus. I actually might feel comfortable thinking about making a move. Are there sectors where that's kind of happening, or are there levels at which that's happening?
We never really see a lot of trends like based on industry. I think firms, for the most part, try to keep bonuses within a range. They may, typically you've got your top bucket, middle bucket, and low bucket, which is usually related to individual performance. Top performers get a higher percentage than, the low bucket performers. So some firms, say business services had a phenomenal year, but consumer didn't do as well. Then the most you can get as a banker on the consumer team is the low bucket bonus, but it's still within, a similar range. So
Got
they
it.
don't typically account for that, mainly because, if you're an analyst or an associate, put in the consumer group, it's not up to you to bring in deals, and they don't want to discourage those employees who are still working just as much because those deals just didn't close. So we don't typically see a lot of differentiation, I guess, on bonuses based on industry as much as we do across the, performance, individual performance, and then the type of platform, I'd say, is the big one. Whether it's lower mid market, bulge bracket, elite boutique, et cetera.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Just to pivot things a little bit, we've touched on the fact that it's an opportunistic candidate driven market, and that in this case, clients need to be the ones who are kind of pursuing the talent. What about counter offers? What about, approaching onboarding and counter offers? Are candidates gonna, take calls and just see, if they can go leverage a counter offer? Should their existing employers kind of be aware of this and be prepared? What's your take on how counteroffers might play into this?
I think it's definitely something firms need to be aware of as, this demand for hiring increases, the demand for retention also increases. And so firms that may have not had the capital to retain or I guess counteroffer somebody in the
Mhm.
last year or two will probably have that ability to do so this year. So if it's a top bucket performer rated candidate, there's a good chance they could receive a counteroffer. I think that a lot of bankers, if they're looking at opportunities, if they're taking time out of their busy schedule to go through an interview process, it's probably not just compensation that they're looking for. It's most likely other things. And so it's not necessarily like a done deal if they receive a counteroffer, they're going to stay put. But, it's always a risk. And I think firms should be prepared to come back. If there is a counteroffer, they should have something in mind to, I guess, compete with if necessary to, end up winning that person over.
And this is to your previous point, right? This is where the setting yourself apart in selling yourself to that talent, right? Don't even let them consider a counteroffer or ask them, right? Are you considering a counteroffer, which is obviously something that we can do on their behalf as well. But asking up front, would you consider a counteroffer? Do we need to beat something, or are you interested because the platform might be better? Right? These are just things to understand along the way from with regards to just good recruitment, so that you avoid the challenges and the potential hiccups down the road.
Exactly. And if you do treat it like a two-way interview process, you'll have answers to all these things. Well, what else is driving you from the company if it's not just comp? Is it, lack of potential, growth potential? Is it lack of junior support, whatever it may be? And understanding that and taking the time to really get to know who you're interviewing will be key. And, if a counteroffer does arise, avoiding it from becoming an issue for you.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing I want to talk about is how we couldn't go an episode of any podcast in 2026 without bringing up the magical buzzword of AI, right? So just tell me your thoughts, your perspective on how artificial intelligence is specifically affecting and impacting the investment banking sector, whether it's augmentation towards deal making or, M&A, or simply just platforms and tools. What are you seeing, and how much is that motivating candidates from like being excited to work with it, and clients to develop to attract talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's become a huge topic of conversation. I would say it seems to be positively impacting the market. It's not, when I'm asked about it or when I'm talking to somebody who wants to discuss AI, it really hasn't been a conversation of how is AI replacing bankers and eliminating jobs. It's more so about how is AI making our jobs more efficient. Banking is known for the long and grueling hours, and I think a few years ago, work from home or work from home flexibility was one of the things that was making their lives a little bit easier. Now we've got AI as a tool to, again, not replace the investment bankers, but to allow them to do things more efficiently. Some things can be more automated. It's interesting because I've worked with several banks that want, they seek out candidates that are AI literate. They know how to use the resources and to make things more efficient or, improve quality or whatever it may be. And I think there's a lot of candidates that I've worked with as well that are seeking firms that allow them to use AI. It's a little bit tougher. Some smaller investment banks that, maybe don't have that infrastructure built in yet. They may struggle a little bit more. And so it's been a big topic of conversation. Like, how can we implement this to make things more efficient? But I really haven't had anyone mention it as a way to replace the actual people that are working on these deals.
And that seems to be the general theme most of the time, right? I think there's a human, fight or flight almost reaction to sensationalize, well, all the jobs are going to be eliminated at a certain level, or anyone who works on this, you're redundant. Just a few guests ago, we had the CEO of an AI company in finance on, and she was saying the exact same thing, right? That whereas the fear was it was going to eliminate, all it's doing is augmenting and supporting and helping to automate. Sure, that might lead to some smaller redundancies, but really this is a tool to help everybody. So let's pick up here. The candidates themselves then, right? What excites them about AI, right? Automation aside, maybe making their life easier from a presentation perspective or, pitch deck perspective. What else about it are you hearing that is appealing Again, is it like the opportunity to, work quicker or have more information? Is it, deal prospecting that things are coming more to them, right? And they can just play offense more. What is it about artificial intelligence that is making the investment banking world more exciting?
I mean, obviously, a big part of it is the efficiency and saving them time so they don't have to work 120-hour weeks to change the formatting of a presentation. But I think the opportunity for continued learning is huge. I mean, a lot of banks have, implemented different kind of mentorship programs and other learning and development, programs or whatever it may be to help bankers who are really passionate about the work to continue to learn and grow. But having AI as a tool allows them to do so independently as well. They don't need to have a VP mentoring them or whatever level. Ideally they'll still have that. They'll still have people they can go to, but having those resources allows them to feel more confident in their own work and their own overall efficiency.
Amazing. Very cool. Exciting times. Sounds like our investment banking activity, at least here at Selby Jennings, should be a little bit more robust and picking up from the last couple of years, which is great. And you will, of course, as always, be at the forefront of that.
Yes, I'm very excited. It's the year's been off to a hot start. I don't really see it slowing down, and so it's always exciting as we kind of move through one of these dynamic markets to see how things change and to help kind of be a resource for the firms we work with and the candidates we work with to update them on the market dynamics and help them be most effective in these types of markets. So I'm very excited for the year and to see where it goes.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, as I mentioned, for sharing your insights and your clearly, ground level perspective of the market.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
That's all for today's episode of Searching Smarter. If you found this conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Until next time, keep searching smarter.